Hello everyone, this is Dawn here with a video today with 13 teachings. The title of the video will be, and this was given to me directly, would be 13 teachings from Jesus. Fear not, I will show you a more excellent way. So this is a video for my Faith Life series. LIFE is an acronym that I use for living in full expression. And so this is about how to really live our faith. This is also related to the Little Letters to the Church series of videos I was doing on that channel, and I may share there. And also connected to the Transformative Path of Jesus work that I did in the Soul Streams journey several years ago now. It would have been 4 or 5 years ago, and unfortunately that's not available right now, but I hope to make it available again soon. So these 13 teachings are really about us walking in the way of our life and coming fully to our life and living in full expression and really having a new understanding about how we can move through life, a whole new way of being ourselves. In this life, and this is the time. It is May 2018 when I'm recording this video, and this is we are now walking into, as many of us know, it's been a time of great transformation really since, well, I mean, where to start, right? It's been more and more and more about transformation, but this 3-year period that we are moving into, leading up to 2020 and then even into 2022, is quite significant. And so these are teachings directly from Yeshua that he has given to me. And these particular 13 things, I'm just going to touch on the highlights here. I hope to come back and write more at some point about this, but I hope that sharing this with you today is helpful to you in your life wherever you are, and that you find meaning or some new thread to go and take that as a place where you can go further explore on your own path in your own life. You can, whether that be if you're called to study the scriptures or if you're called to sit in prayer and meditation and reflection, or if you're called to simply be on the way with it and to observe yourself and how you are moving through life, and what kind of attitude and spirit you are exhibiting on a day-to-day basis, how you are living your faith, and what is that faith really. So those are just questions you can sit with as I share. I do want to share a little bit on a personal note, and I may also share this on my Twin Hearts Ablaze channel, which is about the life of love, and in particular Sacred Partnership Path and the specifics of my own personal journey with regard to that. So I'm going to share just briefly that so this started, the teachings that came through started because I once again saw, just sort of the mainstream Christianity, the church, capital C, and those who say they are living their lives in the way that Jesus calls them to. There was a couple of things that I witnessed that were just horrific, and that always touches me in a very personal, raw place, because it takes me back to my own experience in this life, as well as my understanding and my knowing really of what has happened through all the centuries, not just in Christianity, but through religion and other human systems that have taken us farther from the heart of true faith, what I would call true faith. So I witnessed some of these events, and I was extremely, frustrated and irritated. So I needed to get myself centered again, and I got still, went on a walk, and was talking with Yeshua a bit, and I call him Yeshua and Jesus. And I have, for those of you who are new to me or don't know this, I have had since I was a very small child, Jesus sat with the broken pieces of me internally, and there's so much there that I could share. I mean, every time I start talking about that, I go, and I could go on for hours or days, really, weeks, months, years, lifetimes. So I'll just say that I have always had these conversations. It's been the one rock in my life, and I believe for many lifetimes, really. So I'm always amazed once I recover, and get my bearings and get grounded again. I'm always just amazed at just how wrong um, the church and others who you know, claim that what they are doing in the name of Jesus. Just how wrong they get it, and that the teachings, all the teachings through the centuries, um, have been, how many of them have been based on really erroneous interpretations, and just simply a missing the mark or a misunderstanding of what Jesus was really teaching us through his life, and through the way that he moved through this life um, when he was here, and the way that he still is bearing witness to our journey and with us, God with us, here on the way. So it's frustrating to me. It's one of the things that just really hits me in a sore spot, and I get all in a tizzy about. But when I get grounded again, I have these wonderful conversations, and almost without fail, there's some new learning for me. And this time, the things that I scribbled down quickly, Jesus wanted me to share them with you. So. So in this latest moment of my own personal irritation, um, there was like a moment where I dipped down into literally disgust and just, me wanting to have nothing to do. It's never, ever separated me from, as a matter of fact, it's done the opposite. It's brought me closer to my true knowing and to what I would um, call the authentic faith that I do have, and that deeper relationship. It's always done that. And so if you ever encounter those moments, know that it is an opportunity for you to come closer to God, that God is actually wrapping his arms around you in those moments. So once I returned to my center in this most recent experience, Jesus suggested that it might help if I would speak the truth as I remember it. And, it's always a little intimidating when he suggests those sorts of things. But when I got through protesting that, I just could not do that in the way I was understanding he was asking me to do that. I did pick up the pen as he instructed me to, and I wrote down these quick remembrances that I will share with you, these 13 teachings. And as soon as I finished writing furiously on the page, scribbles, even before I set down my pen, I could hear him laughing. And now another just personal note, the laughter is the laughter in my remembrance of, the spirit of Jesus, of Yeshua, and what he embodied, the grace and the love that he embodied every single day. Those are the things that, are deeply meaningful to me. And so I could hear his laughter, and I haven't heard it for a while. And I have through many, many years of my life, but it's been a while here lately. And it's like a belly laugh. And so he, I was like, why are you laughing? I mean, it was, very conversational moment. And he said, wait, hold on, I'll tell you, but write down this title. And he gave me the title for this video, 13 Teachings, Fear Not, I Will Show You a More Excellent Way. And so hang tight, we're going to get to the 13 teachings, but I just want to share my experience with this was, this title, 13 Teachings, Fear Not, I Will Show You a More Excellent Way, just cracked me up. And then I was laughing hysterically for a number of reasons. One is that when he gave me that title, 13 Teachings, I love the number 12 and 11, and I was like 13. I was like, and I hadn't even made sense of my notes. I didn't know there were 13 things there. That was literally scribbles on a page in all different directions, because that's how I write. And so I was just like, all right. So I wrote it down, and I got a little panicky just momentarily, as I often do, because I'm afraid I'll get it wrong, and then my ego comes in, and I started hearing, again, his voice in my mind, just whispering the word triskaidekaphobia, which I couldn't remember what that was. I mean, I didn't even know when I heard it. I was like, what? I thought it was some Greek Greek word or some like, Aramaic. It didn't sound Aramaic, but whatever. I thought like, what is this? So I Googled it and I totally misspelled it when I Googled it, but I came up with a definition. And some of you may know this already, that this word, triskaidekaphobia, means the fear of the number 13. So like when I heard it, it sounded like gobbledygook. And so then I had to laugh because clearly the number 13 was intentional. And now I still hadn't made sense of my notes on the page. And so sure enough, I then, typed what I had written to the best that I could because I couldn't read some of it. But sure enough, there were 13 things there where Jesus is comparing various approaches or pathways, which is what this video will be about. And so I could also see, there were 13 points or areas that he was talking about. And I could also see the balance and the clarity of what he was showing me with those 13 things and showing us, and this path versus this path. And if you look at often many of his teachings, there were, examples where it was like that. But one of the things about Yeshua that many people miss about when he was teaching, when what's recorded in what we have as the Bible and many other places, manuscripts that are coming to light slowly. But what he was always doing was bringing that into the whole. He was actually embracing it all and helping us to see that it was about balancing those things and loving it all. And that is the key. And so in these 13 teachings, you will hear the opposites. But I want you to remember that it's above all else, what I know of all of his teachings, that he came that we might have life and have it to the full. And that it's always about embracing or embodying the love of God for us and treating ourselves with that same honor and grace that we are so freely given. So last thing that just made me really find this whole experience for myself quite humorous was this reference to a more excellent way. Now, some of you might know that I have many memories and recollections and an affinity for the truth that the Apostle Paul brought forth in his teachings. And I also have, it also intersects with my own personal journey in this life, I believe, in other times, or at least my knowing of what happened in other times, whether I was there or not, and that little line is quite a famous one that Paul wrote. It's between, it's in Corinthians, and it's between, I believe, the 12th and 13th chapters of First Corinthians. And this line, it's the last line of chapter 12. Now, chapter 12 is all about the body of Christ. It's all about the gifts of the Spirit and how we all embody unique gifts. And there's a lot more there for me personally about that particular chapter, both in terms of my personal experience in this life and my feeling, quite rejected and cut out and excised from the body of Christ in terms of a local fellowship of believers, but also in terms of other groups where the center point, presumably or purportedly, was Jesus and his teachings. And so there again, that touches my personal story, but also just in terms of my knowing of those two chapters. Now the chapter 13 that follows this last line of chapter 12 is the love chapter. Many of you will know that love is patient, love is kind, and that beautiful passage that the Apostle Paul left us with. And so it's very deeply meaningful to me, those two chapters. And so I had to laugh when Jesus said a more excellent way in the title of this video. Chapter 13 of First Corinthians, another thing I want to say there is it's really, well, chapter 12, when Paul is writing in First Corinthians, is again, about the gifts of the Spirit. And some of us had our particular gifts, the whole, our unique offerings to this world not misunderstood through time, through all time, not just here and now, and not just me, certainly. I mean, through all time, this has happened. And some gifts have been mocked or maligned, or alternatively discounted, or diminished, or simply discarded, set to the side, by those who are, in any given time in power or authority. And so chapter 13, the love chapter, in terms of it's of a divine love, a timeless love that is true and runs deeper than any heights of human glory, and a pride that would have me or you clinging to the lesser thing. So that's really what chapter 13 is all about. And so it works on so many levels, this title, A More Excellent Way. Certainly it pertains to the teachings that I'll share here. And there is such beauty, and even in just me reflecting on this, in the very different gifts that, say, for example, Yeshua, the Apostle Paul, Mary Magdalene, Peter, the John the Beloved, Thomas. I could go on and on. From early Christianity, I'm drawing, because this is a faith life video. I'm gonna stay focused on that. And Christianity is my tradition. It's where I speak from. But this does not limit this message. This message is for all, across all time, for those of all faiths. So finally, on the title, Fear Not. When I'm like, fear not. And I, in this dialogue, as I was writing it down, and I was like, fear not, like, what are you the angel of the Lord? And then immediately I was like, yes, you are. And I saw two images. One was the Annunciation, where Archangel Gabriel announces to Mary that she will bear a son, and his name shall be Jesus, and his kingdom shall know no end. And then that fear not, and my immediate thought of the angel of the Lord, and drew my heart back to Revelation 22, which Revelation 22 is the last chapter of the Bible, and one that is very near and dear to my heart. It's a treasured passage, really, and it's about the new earth. It's about a return to the garden. It's about the eternal reign of God, alongside the trees and the river and the 12 crops of fruit. And we are the fruit. We are that fruit. Particularly those of us who have been called out through time to be the first to have the opportunity to embody fully that the love that Jesus is talking about here in these 13 teachings. And in that same chapter of Revelation, the angel who has been speaking to John the Beloved says, I, Jesus, have sent my angel to give you this testimony to the churches. And then he says, I am the offspring of David. I am the root and offspring of David. And then he says, I am the bright and morning star. And this is the time we are living in. And in the end of that chapter, John writes, the Spirit and the bride say, come, come, Lord Jesus, come quickly, come. And so I believe that this was quite significant, that I was called to both the birth announcement of Jesus, and then this passage that I so love about what some would call the second coming. And I would invite you not to think of that only as a literal second coming. It can include that, but it's far more beautiful than that, this ushering in of a new earth and a new holiness, and a new understanding and experience of what it means to be, human, and to be so loved. God so loved the world that he gave us Jesus, his only son. So let's get to the 13 teachings. These are teachings of his life, and the way that he walked through his life and how he came that we might have life and have it to the full. That is John 10:10, and that's really the basis of what I share. So that's the main teaching. But these 13 teachings are a way, the way, to come into balance and union within, and thereby pass through that narrow gate that Jesus talks about in Matthew, and into what's on the other side of the narrow gate. Well, that's where we are able to have that life and have it to the full, because we are aligned fully with the truth of who we are, and we are allowing the flow of life through us, which is the grace of God. So think of these 13 ways that I will share as keys to a fuller experience of who you are and who you have come to be. So number one is, the two are freedom and aligning with joyful abundance versus bondage and a refusal of life's flow. So freedom versus bondage. And I'm just going to hit on these 13, the high points here, but there's so much more for each one of them. I may come back and do videos on particular ones, maybe all of them. I don't know right now, but I have a limited amount of time today, and I'm sure you don't want to watch a 3-hour video, so I'm just going to run through them. So number one is freedom and aligning with joyful abundance versus bondage and a refusal of life's flow. So consider how you are moving through life. Are you moving through life with, in a way that is aligned with freedom? Or are you in bondage because you're refusing life's flow? You're trying to control it all. So the second of the 13 truths or keys is daring to step into life without hesitation, regardless of what you think is out of place or less than ideal or imperfect or impermanent, versus sitting on the sidelines and waiting to live because you're so busy avoiding anything that might remind you of your mortality, your potential death, which is a given, or that you're existing in a state that you deem less than perfection, and so therefore you are waiting until you can get better, do better, be better, clean things up, whatever, to fully live. So this is about, again, what I call daring adventures with the new, which is a little acronym I made for my name, or daring adventures and radiant expansion. It means to do that, you have to step out in faith. I'm reminded of, stepping out on walking on the water. So this is all about, without hesitation, immersing yourself in life, standing in the stream of your life, versus delay and waiting and not yet, I'll do that when. So that's number two. Number three, devotion to a present God with you right now, God in you and in your experience, God as me and as you and as each and every one of us. That's one. Versus the whole creation. Okay, so I'm sorry, devotion. The idea is devotion, and all of the things I said in terms of God present with us, in us, through us, and also the whole creation is breathing the breath of God. Versus, so devotion versus worship of a distant God who's always then, back then, or over there, or up there. The worship of a distant God, or a God who is outside of you in your experience, who is separate from you, removed from each and every one of us, except for the ones that are in this templated structure that we've created, that we, the powers that be deem more holy, and therefore, they're good, and we're looking up to them. So it's a false hierarchy, right? And it creates yet another layer of separation. And so what Jesus was saying is, are you living a life of devotion to a God who is here and now, who is in you and with you, walks with you? Or are you worshiping a distant God and therefore creating a paradigm of separation and buying into you're susceptible then to when others would say that there are some who are more worthy than others, which is simply not what Jesus taught. The fourth teaching, the truth of peace that passes understanding versus the illusion of a power that passes as understanding. I love this one. I love the words he gave me here. The truth of a peace that passes understanding, which he talks so beautifully in the Gospel of John about, and versus the illusion of a power that passes as understanding. Peace versus power. And really, I would say the true power, I think Jesus would say this as well, the true power is in the peace, that the peaceable kingdom. This is the power of God. The fifth teaching, trust in meeting the miracle and a love of finding everything in a field of nothing versus mistrust. Usually that comes in the form of musing about missing the miracle, and like this constant replay of the negative downward spiral, the fear of losing people or places and things, even when you have everything. I see this so often right now in my life. It's just it's a little, when you get clarity and when you align your life with trust in meeting the miracle, you see things it's so evident, that what's running the energy of trust versus mistrust. So do you trust that you will meet the miracle? Do you have a love of finding everything in a field of nothing? You don't have to have anything to start for the miracle to occur. Faith, hope, and love. The sixth teaching is receiving the gift of grace that is life versus denying the gift of life or pushing it away. And often, how do you push it away? Often by clutching to these repetitive cycles of shame, because you're just attached to this way of viewing yourself, usually, that blocks you from the beautiful gifts of grace that are ours. The seventh teaching is an openness to practice self-examination, self-forgiveness, and self-responsibility, leading to endless new frontiers of experience, versus the closed-circuit projection of shame, that shame we just talked about, the projection of that outward in the form of blame that plays in an endless loop in your life. It's constant and continual. You just find new people, new situations, new problems. It's a closed system, right, that you've created for yourself. So are you walking through life in a way that is open, and are you taking full responsibility for your own actions? Are you forgiving yourself, and are you loving, bringing that love and grace that is so freely given to your own life? Are you examining your own life, and are you then applying those things and aligning your actions to and your thoughts and emotions, feelings and actions to what is most true? The eighth teaching, allowing and letting go of all you know does not really belong to you anyway. Let me repeat that. Allowing and letting go of all you know does not belong to you anyway, versus resistance and holding on to all you see as yours and then ever grasping at more. Really feel into the difference of that one. That this allowing has been a great challenge in my own life here as Dawn. I don't, for a long time I didn't get it, and then when I got it, I resisted it. And it's about love versus fear, and it's about loving ourselves when we are in that fear. So allowing and letting go, surrender of all that none of this belongs to us. We belong to everything, and at the same time it is also freely given to us. And so it's also about a life of gratitude. It's one thing Jesus is saying to me right now: don't forget to tell them about gratitude. So this allowing and letting go, it's coming from an attitude of gratitude, and that peace versus power that we talked about. The ninth teaching is about living in presence versus strangling the life out of now by kind of bouncing between the future and the past. And so you're in this constant cycle of, fretting and worrying versus planning and making, again, you're the one in control here, going to plot it all out and find a path. It's about regretting versus this sort of like spanning, leaping into, what isn't even here and now, and there's value to both, right? There's value to examining the past, certainly, and there's value to planning for the future and having a hope and a vision, certainly. But what Jesus is saying here is that when we live in the presence, there is there's no distraction in terms, we're not, and yet when we're our eyes are always fixed on, our hearts are always fixed on, what was, or what we lost, or what we would have done better, or what if, or why not, or in the future, just sort of kind of pondering what will be, or making our plans and scurrying to get everything aligned just so, because we think that we're the ones in control here. When we're doing that, we're distracted, and when we're distracted, we distraction, we lose traction in our lives. And so the gift is to live in here and now, in this moment, in this day, this one day. The 10th teaching is about the elevation of and to a higher love that is rooted in our eternal belonging to one another and to all that is, and seeing ourselves as whole and complete, and then coming together to share a mutual celebration of one another, in partnerships, in groups, one-on-one conversations, and making love manifest. Making love manifest, and then by doing that, setting all things free to return to their natural state in that highest form of love. So that's one side. The elevation of a higher love here is what he's talking about, versus the compromise of what we're used to as relationship, common relationships, which require us often to enter into a sort of complicit agreement, that binds us, and we are bound by mutual obligation to one another, and that only works when one or both of us, or usually both, sacrifice the self and then lose the truth of who they are, and instead create these false identities, and attach to that. And so this one is very complicated and needs further exploration. But what I'll say here is Jesus did nothing out of obligation, and certainly not to human systems. He did things out of love. Even the things where he followed his own faith and religious traditions, he did from love, and from the true higher love that he knew and embodied, in terms of when he would talk about I and the Father are one. So the elevation of that higher love, and that always begins within us. So that's the one path, is understanding that we belong to one another and all it is, and that we are whole and complete and loved as we are. So that elevation of that, versus this sort of like path of reduction, and we often in humanity, that happens when we form these relationships of one kind or another to individuals and groups. That spans everything, in terms of the partnerships that we're familiar with, in terms of marriage or life partner, in terms of work life, in terms of some who we witness who sell their soul to the devil in terms of work, just for money and for ambition. And so that all of those sorts of choices are a settling for a lesser form of love, and that is a denial of our own wholeness and magnificence in who we are and who we came to be. I will say more about that in a separate video. The 11th teaching is about true faith. These last are about true faith, true hope, true love. So true faith and humility that sets you free from all other entanglements. True faith and humility that sets you free from all entanglements. This one was interesting to me. Versus the falsity of beliefs that entrap. And this can look like religious superiority. It can look like webs of regulation and systems that are very, very structured, and must do this and this and this and this and this. So those are that Jesus called those the falsity of beliefs that entrap, versus true faith and humility that sets us free from all entanglements. Now this doesn't mean you're not in partnership and relationship to one another at all. This is not what he's saying, but true faith and humility is an upliftment, a setting free. The 12th teaching is true hope and confidence today, as it is, always and ever the same as the past and future potentialities, versus the falsity of pretense that confines, a vision of heaven beyond the eternal now and the promise of perfection tomorrow. So as I understand it, what Jesus was meaning here was that, that in this moment is where we find our hope. Our hope is not out there in the distance, a wing and a prayer. Our hope is rooted and grounded here and now, and it allows us to walk through this life with confidence, a fidelity with a knowing of that we were created for, and that God wishes for us a hope and a future. Jeremiah 29:11. And so also this idea that today is in this moment of now, there is also, it's the same thing as all the past potentialities and future potentialities. And so everything can be found and accessed here and now, and that is why we have that hope and why we can have confidence and approach boldly. So true hope versus the falsity of pretense that confines, or a vision, so pretense, and think about that word. What does that mean? When we're pretending, we haven't gotten around to tending. We're just in this, false reality. And I think that's why he kept using this word, the falsity of pretense that confines versus true hope and confidence today, as it is in this moment. And regardless of what the moment looks like, it doesn't have to be a beautiful day like this. The 13th teaching, true love and purity that multiply and expand the accordion of our experience and our understanding of who we are as love, always being offered up to us. So true love and purity on the one side, versus the falsity of corruption that reduces and leads us into inauthentic bondage in the name of love and has us thinking we are separate from love, a love that we often see as elusive. So true love and purity always expand our experience of who we are and our understanding, our deep understanding that we are one with love. And so that is true love. And it's a love that is, has no limitation, versus what Jesus called the falsity of corruption that reduces and leads us into inauthentic bondage in the name of love. So many things come to mind there. I'm thinking of the song by U2, In the Name of Love. Listen to that if you aren't familiar with that. And then also the ways that we do this in our everyday lives. When we are, and I'll say here from my own experience that often there are some very, very crafty explanations about very lofty is the word, lofty explanations of, what love is that are really just based on human understandings often that are tied again to these systems, and they can lead us, astray, because they can sound right or enticing, because we all want to be a better person, and yet they are completely rooted in a very egoic view or path, and that's not the path that Jesus walked at all. He did walk that path of true love and purity, that always was, expanding life for himself and for all of those around him who walked with him, to include the time, the walking through the darkest of times when he was here. There was always an expansion of that experience, a surrendering to, again, that higher love we talked about earlier, and to God's will, and that purity of It really, this one ties into all of the above ones, that devotion um, to God, the true faith, the true hope, the elevation of a higher love, the allowing, the letting go, the living in the present moment, an openness, receiving the grace that is life, even in the knowing and the foreshadowing and the imminent nature of our demise or death. Um, the truth of a peace that passes understanding, devotion, I mentioned, daring to step into life without hesitation, and then freedom and aligning with joyful abundance. All of these and that true love and purity are what will expand our life and help us to return to the core of who we are, the core of who you are, which is light and life and love. And you are here to have life and to have it to the full. And I hope there's been something in these 13 teachings. I know I've been talking a little fast, just kind of in that zone today, and it sounds like I finished right on time because here comes the yard crew. So many blessings, much love to you wherever you are on your way today. Take care. Bye-bye.